The next topic to be studied is the translation. Now, translation means the language of the nucleotides of messenger RNA is now to be translated into the language of amino acids. So that's why the name translation has been given to it. Now, normally the genetic information flows from DNA to messenger RNA and messenger RNA to the proteins. But sometimes the messenger RNA information can be further converted to the DNA with the help of reverse transcriptase. Now, reverse transcriptase is present in certain retroviruses where the genetic material is the RNA, not the DNA. So when these retroviruses like HIV virus or herpes virus infects the body, then the genetic material present in these viruses being RNA has to be converted to the deoxyribonucleic acid with the help of reverse transcriptase, and this newly formed single-stranded DNA will be polymerized to double-stranded DNA, and then it will be incorporated into the host genome, leading to infection. But now we are talking about the translation, and the messenger RNA after its processing, that is the 7-methyl guanosine triphosphate capping at the 5' end, intron exon splicing leading to the removal of intron and joining of the exons, and the poly A tailing, the mature mRNA now comes into the cytoplasm and gets combined with the 40S ribosomal subunit. Now, in the eukaryotes, there are two ribosomal subunits known as 40S and 60S ribosomal subunits. In the prokaryotes, these are actually much smaller and designated as 30S and 50S ribosomal subunits. Now, the mRNA binds with the 40S ribosomal subunit, that is the smaller subunit, and now the initiating amino acyl tRNA combines with initiation factor 3, GTP, and also initiation factor 2. Now, this complex gets attached to the first codon of the messenger RNA. Now, before this process, known as the initiation of protein synthesis, each of the 20 amino acids have to be activated to form the amino acyl tRNA. As there are 20 specific amino acids, and each amino acid has got a specific tRNA. Now, for example, the alanine tRNA will combine with only the alanine, and this process requires 2 ATP molecules. Otherwise, 1 ATP is converted to AMP and pyrophosphate, and this is the actual consumption of two high energy bonds. So the activation of amino acid requires ATP molecules and the corresponding tRNA and the specific amino acid. Now, for example, phenylalanine will have its own tRNA. Glutamic acid will have its own tRNA. That means the amino acid combines with a specific tRNA. That means each amino acid combines with a specific tRNA. So there should be a minimum of 20 transfer RNAs, but actually it is found that there are 32 transfer RNAs present for the cytoplasmic synthesis of proteins, whereas in the mitochondria there are a less number of transfer RNAs. Now, after the initiation process, the mRNA mRNA combines with the 40S ribosomal subunit, and the first amino acyl tRNA, which is in all cases methionine tRNA, combines with an initiation factor 3 and another initiation factor 2 and GTP, and the whole of amino acyl tRNA is bound to the ribosome. This again requires an initiation factor 1. So initiation factor 3, 2 and 1, these are protein factors which are required for the initiation of protein synthesis. Now in the next step, the 60S ribosomal subunit also joins with it, and this requires other initiation factors like initiation factor 4 and its sub-fractions, and also initiation factor 5. So in eukaryotes, the initiation process is more complex, requiring many more initiation factors, whereas in the prokaryotes, the initiation requires only 3 initiation factors, that is 3, 2 and 1. Now, so this is known as pre-initiation complex. This is converted to the initiation complex. The first amino acyl tRNA is attached to the first codon of the mRNA. So between the mRNA and the tRNA, there is an anticodon to codon joining. Now, if the codon is AGA, the anticodon present on the tRNA will be UCU. So that is the codon to anticodon relationship. The codon is present on the messenger RNA, whereas the anticodons are present on the tRNA. Now, if we look at the whole ribosome with the 60S and 40S ribosomal subunits, we can see 2 sites. One is known as the P site, known as peptidyl site, and another one is known as the amino acyl site or the A site. Now, the first amino acyl tRNA has entered the P site, leaving the A site free. Now, all the incoming amino acyl tRNAs will come and join with the ribosome and the mRNA at the A site. So now the second codon is recognized on the mRNA, and if it is glutamic acid, if it is a codon indicating glutamic acid, then the glutamyl tRNA, which has got a glutamic acid, will combine and join with the second codon of the mRNA. Now, there are 2 amino acyl tRNAs lying side by side. One, the initiator amino acyl tRNA, that is methionine tRNA, is on the P side, and the second amino acyl tRNA, that is the glutamyl tRNA, is on the A side. 2 amino acids together, and the peptidyl transferase enzyme can bring about the peptide bond formation between the first 2 amino acids. So now we get a dipeptide having 2 amino acids. So a dipeptide is synthesized. Now this is known as peptidyl tRNA. The peptidyl tRNA occupies the A site, and at the P site the tRNA has not got any amino acid attached to it, and so it is removed. It is removed from the P site. Now the P site is free. The A site is occupied by peptidyl tRNA. Now, but all the new amino acyl tRNAs, for example, the third amino acyl tRNA, can come only at the A site. So there is a requirement of shifting of the peptidyl tRNA occupying the A site to the P site. Now this is known as translocation, and so the ribosome actually moves over the mRNA by 1 codon distance. So this requires an elongation factor 1, and also GTP is required. So now the initiator codon is out of the reading frame, and the second codon is present, and also the third codon is also present. Now what is the third codon? It is recognized, and the third amino acyl tRNA joins at the A site. So the peptidyl tRNA is on the P site, and the amino acyl tRNA, which is the third amino acid, is on the A site. Again, there will be a peptide bond formation. So the second peptide bond is formed, and we get a tripeptide. Now this process is known as the elongation, and this requires elongation factor 1 and 2. So in this manner, gradually the codon is read without any errors, and then depending upon the codon, new amino acids are polymerized into the protein molecule, and maybe hundreds of amino acids are added in this manner, and at a later stage there will be some nonsense codons or termination codons appearing on the mRNA. These termination codons do not indicate any amino acid. So there is no amino acyl tRNA occupying the A site, and there are releasing factors which will actually remove the growing amino acyl moieties, now known as proteins, and the protein chain gets removed from the site with the help of releasing factors. With this, the protein synthesis is complete. But as and when this protein is synthesized, it is not an active protein. It has to be made into an active protein. For example, pepsinogen is an enzyme which is inactive, and it has to be made active into pepsin. Similarly, trypsinogen and chymotrypsinogen are inactive enzymes, and they have to be activated to the corresponding active enzymes. Normally, some peptide bonds, for example, amino acids, are removed from the N-terminus so that the proteins become active. This is one example of post-translational modification. Post-translational modification also takes place in the case of activation of proinsulin. Proinsulin is not an active hormone. For the function of insulin, it has to be activated by removing the C peptide from the proinsulin, so that A and B chains are formed, and they are interconnected by the disulfide bonds. So these are all examples of post-translational modifications. Another example is the formation of mature collagen. The procollagen is converted to the mature collagen. In this, there is a hydroxylation of lysine and proline to hydroxylysine and hydroxyproline. Now, these hydroxylation requires ion atom in the ferrous state, and the ion is kept in the ferrous state by a reducing agent like ascorbic acid. So, for the proper maturation of collagen, which is the structural protein present in the connective tissue, we have to have the ion in the ferrous state. Now, if vitamin C is deficient, so the iron will not be available in the ferrous state, and there will be defective formation of collagen, and this may lead to the scurvy, as collagen is also present in the walls of the capillaries in addition to many other places. So these are all examples of post-translational modification, so as to make an enzyme or a protein active or a hormone active. Another example is gamma carboxylation of glutamic acid present on the clotting factors, factor 2, 5, 7 and 9. This is glutamic acid residues. One more addition of carboxylic group takes place, so it forms gamma carboxy glutamic acid with 2 CO minus groups. This is done with the help of vitamin K. So vitamin K helps in the clotting process. So to these two CO minus groups, divalent calcium Ca2 plus can join, and this will initiate the process of blood clotting. Now, there are some proteins which has to be folded properly. So protein folding is important. Any form of folding will not do. There should be a specific tertiary structure happening so that the protein becomes properly active. So protein folding is a process which is of importance. Now then the next process is the protein targeting. That is, the proteins formed properly have to be targeted, have to be delivered to proper places. Now, for example, the glycolytic enzymes are supposed to remain in the cytoplasm, where the mitochondrial enzymes should go to the mitochondria, whereas the DNA polymerase should go to the nucleus. So improper location of the enzymes lead to several diseases. So they should be properly delivered to the proper place. Now there is no point in having the mitochondrial enzymes in the cytoplasm, which will be a wasteful condition. So for example, there is a disease known as Zellweger disease, in which the peroxisomes do not contain beta oxidation enzymes to oxidize the very long chain fatty acids. So this leads to Zellweger's disease and also Refsum's disease. Now another aspect are the prions. The prions are proteinaceous infectious particles, and the one abnormal protein, which is known as prion, can make other neighboring molecules of protein also prion proteins. Now the prion proteins are involved in the Alzheimer's disease because the amyloid proteins are suspected to be prions. These prion proteins cannot be digested, cannot be hydrolyzed, they are not soluble, so they go on accumulating in the brain and cause the memory loss, which is seen in Alzheimer's disease. Now this was first detected in the scrappy disease, where there are prion proteins present, and the sheep has got a condition to scratch, so it is known as scrappy. It is also another example is the Kuru disease, which is or mad cow disease. Now this is due to the cattle feed infected with contaminated sheep muscle. It was fed to the cattle, and scrappy is first found in sheep, and so the scrappy got transmitted into the cows. So there was a crossing of one species to the other, and these cattle were also eaten by some people, and the human beings also could be affected by this. So the prions have a different structure. They have more of a beta pleated sheet rather than the alpha helix. And prions also can be compared to a person having a dual personality, like a gentleman and a criminal. So it is found that the proteins also can serve as information molecules, and can be and can convert a normal protein into an abnormal protein, something like the replication model. So this is about the post-translational modifications and how important it is. Okay.